was midwinter, midday, 2004. As Lisa Montgomery drove through the desolate landscape of western Missouri and into the small town of Skidmore. A rope and a knife in her jacket. Inside this house lived a 23-year-old dog breeder, Bobby Joe Stinnett. Lisa said she had come to look at her puppies. But Bobby Joe was pregnant, and Lisa had come for her unborn child.
Nottoway County 911, what is your emergency? What's wrong?
She's just beside herself. It's too much. You know, you're listening to a mother that has just found their daughter dead. And that anguish, and it's just, yeah, I don't ever want to hear it again.
Please, honey.
Lisa strangled Bobby Joe, then took steps to remove her child.
Lisa told me that she cut the cord, held it between her fingers, put the baby inside her coat, and went out the door and got in her vehicle and drove off.
Lisa had made careful preparations. She'd come with a syringe and a clamp. She'd studied C-sections on the internet. The baby survived.
This is not something of somebody that's, has a mental illness. This was not a spontaneous fit of anger or rage. This was meticulously planned out.
Bobby Joe was loved in this small, close-knit town.
You couldn't live in Skidmore and not know her. So this is it? This is where she's buried?
Karen Kepka was her friend.
She looked good pregnant. She really did. She had that internal glow. She doesn't get that opportunity to hold her baby because that woman took that right away from her. I can't even comprehend what Bobby's family went through. Lisa Montgomery took Bobby Joe Stinnett from us. Personally, today, I think she's evil. I think she is evil.
This is Lisa Montgomery. Is this the face of evil? Or just of a broken woman?
How old do you think she is here?
I think she was probably about 5 there.
Diane Mattingly, her half-sister, grew up in the same house as Lisa.
Well, look at her eyes here. To see how bright and how big her smile is.
One night, when Diane was 8 and Lisa just 4, there came an ordeal so traumatic that it's left lifelong scars.
Lisa and I were in the same room. We had bunk beds, but our beds were right next to each other. If we reached out with our little arms, we could touch hands. This man walks into our room and he gets undressed and he gets in bed with me and he rapes me. And I remember just really thinking, I have to be quiet because if she wakes up, he's going to do this to her. And I couldn't let him do this to her. I couldn't. So I took it.
Diane never spoke of her rape as a child. but was later taken to foster care for parental neglect. After she left, Lisa felt the wrath of her mother, Judy.
The suffering that Lisa had at the hands of her mother is almost indescribable.
Judy would tape her mouth shut because she just didn't want to hear her mouth. She didn't want to hear her talking, so she would tape her mouth shut.
Lisa, who confessed to her crime, has been in prison for 16 years. Toby, who is in prison with her, became a close friend. Lisa told Toby she had brain damage.
She thinks that probably happened when her stepfather would grab her by her long hair and slam her head against the concrete driveway repeatedly when she was just 6 or 7 years old.
Lisa's family moved constantly, a life of poverty, alcohol, and violence. Eventually, Lisa too was preyed upon and raped. Her tormentor was her stepfather, Jack.
It started at 11. It's possible that it started before then, but what we know is that Jack Kleiner started to groom her as pedophiles do. He would strip her naked, he would whip her with belts and, beat her with his hands on her naked body.
Some of the abuse Lisa suffered as a child and her mental condition came up at her trial in 2007. None of it was seen as cause for leniency. Lisa was sentenced to death. But just 4 years ago, Lisa began to speak of her teenage years, the time of her deepest terror.
Jack had built a special room off of the trailer that they had lived in. And they would bring Lisa in there. So the plumbers would come in and have sex with her. And they would hit her if she did it wrong, or if they needed electrical work. Hey, I got a daughter here you can have sex with.
The men, Lisa said, degraded and hurt her. 3 or 4 of them at a time. For hours.
I still can't grasp how a mother can say to her child, you have to earn your keep, so you have to have sex with this man so I can get the plumbing done.
How long did this go on for?
It went on for years.
A member of the team that originally prosecuted Lisa is skeptical of these horrific allegations.
Allegations of being a victim of sex trafficking and gang rape did not surface until 12 years after the trial. Now at the 11th hour, we have this newly discovered evidence, and Lisa Montgomery is the source that brings this up. It's an extremely delayed disclosure of additional horrific abuse.
Lisa herself is the main source of the story. How can we know it's true?
The government's chief expert at trial told us that he was now convinced that Lisa was sexually abused, gang raped, and trafficked by her mother.
Lisa's stories were corroborated by her cousin. Now Lisa has been diagnosed with mental disorders which make her delusional.
She was just kind of almost catatonic some days. She had spent so much time in her life blocking out horrible things that she just had this wall and she just blocked out everything, good things and bad things. It was just the way she coped with anything.
Skidmore, where the murder took place, is in a deeply Republican part of America. The town is poor, derelict, and mainly white. This is Middle America, Here, many dismiss Lisa's mental issues as excuses.
I think it's an insult to sexual assault survivors to imply that they're ticking time bombs and at some point they're just going to go out and do some horrendous crime. I think that's a cop-out.
Bobby Joe's friend Karen agrees.
When you heard that Lisa Montgomery had been sentenced to death, what did you think?
Yes.
You want to see her put to death?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. In fact, if I could pull the switch, I would do it.
A pardon by President Trump would outrage many of his supporters. These parts of America didn't vote for Democrat Joe Biden. He wants American justice to focus on rehabilitation and redemption.
President-elect Joe Biden wants to abolish the death penalty. Do you think people around here are ready for that?
You're in a red county, and Missouri is pretty much red. This is a Republican area, and people are not happy with the election results in this area.
So that's a no.
That's a no.
President Trump has cleared the way for executions to go on even if lethal injections aren't available. He has approved the use of firing squads, gas chambers. Do you support that?
I'm okay with that.
You're okay with firing squads?
Sure.
Terre Haute, Indiana. No woman has been sentenced to death by the U.S. federal government in almost 70 years. But Lisa Montgomery is to be executed here in 7 days. Protesters keep vigil.
And we'll just keep tolling this bell until we hear that she in fact has died.
President Trump has overseen more executions in a single year than any president since the 1800s.
It's really a sad, sad statement that this killing spree has happened under President Trump.
I think it's basically red meat for his babes. That's the only reason he's doing it. You know, they love execution.
Far fewer Americans today back the death penalty than 15 years ago. But the majority still want convicted murderers to die. The day has come. At 6 o'clock, Lisa is to be executed by lethal injection. The execution team is ready. Toby has had a recent letter from Lisa.
She wrote with a black crayon because they wouldn't let her have a pen or a pencil.
Do you have a sense of how she'll be on the day? How she'll cope with it?
That Lisa going to that execution will be like watching a 5-year-old little girl who can't quite grasp an adult situation.
Lisa Montgomery may have delusions, but she appears to know good from evil. After confessing, Lisa said to the sheriff, "I am a monster."
This is a devil come back to earth disguised as Lisa Montgomery. I have no remorse for her. She just needs to be done.
Lisa has asked to die without family. Diane waits outside. It's past 6. There are last-minute appeals. For those at home, the uncertainty is unbearable.
We're still waiting to know the fate of my friend Lisa. And I'm praying for a positive outcome and that tomorrow she'll still be here with us. That the U.S. Supreme Court denies Lisa Montgomery's stays, clearing the way for execution. I'll always remember my friend, and I'll never stop loving her.
In the dead of night, Lisa Montgomery is put to death.
I felt a sense of relief that justice had finally been served. It's been an emotional day, and I'm going to start my healing process.
Lisa's mental state deteriorated in her last days. She lost touch with reality. America has executed a woman who many believe was incapable of understanding her own death. This is a country at war with itself over its beliefs and its values. For one America, this was justice. For the other, it was horrifying.